In our crazy modern world, we're all looking for a solution to burnout, to distraction, to just all the chaos. Well, today, we're going to look for answers in a pretty unexpected place, the mind of a 16th century French philosopher. His name was Michel de Montaigne, and it turns out he came up with a pretty radical blueprint for creating an inner sanctuary.
So first things first, why did Montaigne feel this incredible need to just escape? Well, as we're about to see, his world might feel way more familiar than you'd think.
I mean, listen to that. It sounds like something you'd see on a motivational poster today, right? But back in the 1500s, this was a completely revolutionary idea. For Montaigne, this was basically a declaration of independence. He was drawing a line in the sand with a world that just took too much from him.
And this is exactly why his words still hit so hard. I mean, look at this. His time was filled with brutal religious wars, plagues, and just constant political drama. And ours? Yeah, it's a different flavor of chaos for sure, but it's chaos all the same. The constant noise, the endless notifications, that feeling of being in a perpetual crisis, it's just exhausting. Montaigne knew that feeling deep in his bones.
So what did he do about it? He quit. Seriously. At just 38 years old, at the absolute height of his career, he just walked away from it all. But this wasn't about being lazy. No, this was a strategic retreat. It was the start of a brand new project, the study of himself.
And his solution wasn't just some abstract idea. He made it a real, physical place. He called it his Tower of the Self, and it was here that he started building this dedicated space for his soul. Okay, and this is where Montaigne's whole idea gets really practical. He believed that to really think, you had to carve out a dedicated space, kind of like a fortress of solitude. For him, it was his library, up in a tower on his family's estate, a place set apart from all the daily noise of work and family life. And he wasn't messing around with this project. How serious was he? He filled this refuge with about 1,500 books. Now, that was a massive personal library for the time. This wasn't just a side hobby. This was an all-in commitment to his own intellectual freedom. And just listen to the language he uses here. My throne. Absolute authority. Wow, this room was so much more than just a place with books. It was his own private kingdom, the one place in the entire world where he was the only ruler of his own mind.
But, building the tower, that was just step one. The next part was all about how he furnished it, not just with books, but with ideas. And this is where we really get into the how-to of his whole method.
So instead of hanging up some inspirational posters, Montaigne had these phrases from ancient Greek philosophers painted right onto the beams of his ceiling. But look at what they say. I do not understand. I determine nothing. These aren't answers. They're prompts. They were designed to make him question everything, to stay humble, and to keep thinking.
And that's such a huge difference from how we often think today. Our modern platitudes, they give us simple, easy answers that make us feel good. Montaigne's phrases did the exact opposite. They were like intellectual sparring partners, always pushing him to question what he thought he knew for sure.
Which, of course, raises a pretty powerful question for all of us, doesn't it? If you were going to paint your own core principles on the ceiling, what would they be? Would they be easy answers, or would they be challenging questions? Okay, so you've built your tower, you've curated your guiding principles. Now what do you actually do in there? Well, for Montaigne, the main event was reading. But probably not in the way you were taught to do it. He had this wonderfully chaotic method. He just wandered through his books, picking one up, putting another one down, with no real plan. See, the goal wasn't to finish a book or master a subject. The goal was simply to find ideas that sparked his own thoughts, and then immediately apply them to his own life. And he said it himself. If a book gets boring or difficult, just drop it. This wasn't about being lazy. It was about protecting his own curiosity. For him, reading was meant to be a pleasure, a conversation, not some chore you have to power through.
And all of this, the refuge, the reading, the writing, it all points in one single direction, inward. It was all about understanding the self.
What a fascinating way to think about it. He didn't see his famous book of essays as some separate thing that he created. He saw it as a part of him, something that grew as he grew. And that, in turn, actually shaped the person he became. The writer and the book were one and the same.
And that is exactly why he called his writings essays. In French, the word essay literally means an attempt or a test. He wasn't pretending to have all the answers. He was just trying things out on the page, attempting to map the wild, contradictory landscape of his own mind.
And after decades of doing this, of just studying himself, he arrived at this absolutely profound conclusion. He realized that by looking deeply and honestly at just one person, himself, with all his quirks and flaws, he was actually looking at a blueprint for all of humanity.
And this brings us to the final and maybe the most important takeaway from Montaigne. For him, this whole project was never, ever finished. And that was the entire point. Self-knowledge isn't a destination you just arrive at, it's the road you travel on. I mean, just look at the life of his book. He published the first edition, but then he just kept adding to it, scribbling new ideas in the margins of his own copy, constantly expanding his thoughts. He was literally in a conversation with his past self, revising his ideas right up into the day he died.
And that's the big lesson, isn't it? There is no final draft of Montaigne, because there's no final draft of you. You're a work in progress. The goal isn't to find some fixed final version of yourself, but to keep engaging in that lifelong process of becoming who you are.
He knew his journey was an infinite one. As long as he could think, as long as he could write, the exploration was going to continue. It was all about the process, not the product. And that really leaves us with a final, powerful question to think about. Montaigne taught us that the real project isn't about writing a book. It's about writing a life. So, as you go about your day, think of yourself as the author. Your life is your greatest essay. What are you going to write in the next chapter?